most podcasters think that posting clips on social media is a great way to grow their reach, but these business owners end up wasting years to never actually grow their reach or their podcast. So here's how to avoid that. The very first thing that you need to do is to really think about how people actually find podcasts to listen to. When was the last time you opened up LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or bloody TikTok, if you use TikTok that is, in order to try and find a podcast to listen to? It doesn't really happen. You go on these platforms to be distracted, maybe because you want to post some content on there, or you go on there to actually just switch off and, find something entertaining to read, to watch. But the likelihood that you stumble upon a podcast clip that you then stop on, you then watch, and then you then decide to go through to the person's bio and then consume a 60-minute podcast is zero. Now, most business owners have this idea that if they just promote enough online, then the podcast will grow. But 4 years ago, in 2022, one of our mentors encouraged us to actually speak to 100 plus business owners and experts with podcasts to figure out why so many people struggle to grow. Now, the audience ranged from those who are getting like barely any downloads, like 1,000 monthly downloads after 2 years of podcasting, to those who've been podcasting for 12 months, getting 100, 200, 300,000 monthly downloads, earning 6 or 7 figures per year with their podcast. So again, it's a very big range. Now, the number one way that everyone across the board was using, again, using is a keyword here, to try and grow their show and grow their reach was by posting online. But then we asked them, well, has this actually worked for you? And there's only one guy that said yes, and that's because one of his posts went mega viral, and that specific episode had more listeners. But if everyone else, their reach was not growing. The interesting thing is most people were still promoting online, even though they were very aware that their numbers aren't moving. They were basically stagnant. And I think the reason is because they didn't have clarity around how podcasts actually grew. And whether we like it or not, I don't agree with this, but I think it's way easier to make yourself feel busy and make yourself feel productive by posting online to feel like you're doing something when in actuality is not actually taking you forward to hit the goal you want to accomplish with the show. So you then stay stuck wasting time on actions that aren't actually moving you forward when it comes to growing your podcast reach or making more money from your show. And it's because fundamentally you haven't gotten that clarity around how podcasts grow. So how do podcasts actually grow? Well, me and Ty, around the same time, discovered a guy called Jake Ward who grew his podcast to over 300,000 monthly listeners. And I stress this so much because if you don't understand how ridiculous this is as a business owner, the fact that he was able to accomplish this in 9 months without posting on social media, without having to manage and have high profile guests onto a show. It was actually a solo podcast. And he just had a very simple process he used to get his show discovered by new listeners when those listeners were in a state when they're looking for content. This is very different to trying to convince a total stranger online on the toilet doing you know what to go and listen to your podcast. So what Jake did was he got a show ranked on Apple and Spotify through podcast SEO. Now, this isn't a video about podcast SEO. I'm not going to give you a complete breakdown. I've done plenty of those before, and there'll be another one right here. But what you need to understand is you'll keep wasting your time and you won't generate the leads or sales from your podcast that you want, or even the authority positioning you desire, if you're not reaching more listeners because you keep applying and taking the actions you know aren't actually helping you grow. And don't fall into the trap of believing that if you just put out more content, the podcast will blow up. I promise you it won't. I've spoken to podcasters who've been doing it for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, across the board, some even 5 years, some even 7 years. And I can tell you now that every single one of them have been consistent. That's the easy part. That's the basic. That's a given. It's kind of like an Olympic athlete showing off that they train at the gym 3 to 4 times per week. It's like, oh yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Of course you're going to train 3 to 4 times a week. The same with podcasting. That's the standard. Like, don't have as a badge of honor that you were consistent. If you've done it for 7 years, that's impressive. Don't get me wrong. That's very impressive. But at the same time, don't fall into the mindset that just more time and consistency will help you grow your show. It won't. You consistently taking the right actions is what will help your podcast grow. But if you're doing the same thing and for the last 6 months your listenership hasn't grown, you haven't made more money from the podcast, you aren't generating leads, people aren't reaching out to you and giving you feedback aside from maybe your guest, then that's a sign that the current strategy and approach needs to change. So I'm just planting the seed in so you have the awareness around why the show itself and why promoting on social media will not help you grow your show's reach or help you grow your show's reach. It'll just lead to more wasted time. Now that time, and maybe you have an agency who's doing some clips for you, that time and money, that can be invested into actually figuring out how to grow properly by getting your show ranked on Apple and Spotify. We've had plenty of clients who've completely transformed their show, grown their reach consistently, reaching thousands of new listeners, becoming a recognized authority in their space, and more importantly, driving way more leads and consistent sales from their actual podcast. The podcast going from being this hobby time suck thing that you kind of enjoy but are starting to question, like, is this even worth it? Like, should I keep on doing this? To this positive ROI thing that you do that you also enjoy. It's not like you now grow the show and make more money and all of a sudden you enjoy the podcast less. No, you enjoy the podcast way more and you feel so much more motivated to keep the podcast going because you know it's not a waste of time, effort, or money. And it's because you have the right strategy. So look, my encouragement to you is to click this button here. It's going to take you to a full breakdown where I explain in principle and show you how podcast SEO actually works and how you can use it to grow your reach so much faster. With that being said, I'll catch you in the emails.